Someone is leaving forever, and a miracle is coming. That's how it always works, isn't it? You can't have one without the other. Something precious walks out the door, gone for good, and everyone cries about the loss. But what they don't see is that the empty space it leaves behind, that's where the miracle fits. Life doesn't hand you gifts while your arms are already full. It rips something away. It breaks the pattern. It leaves you gasping, and then, when you're raw enough to notice, it slips in the impossible. Pain makes room for wonder, and loss clears the stage for something greater to step in. When someone leaves forever, people panic. They cling, they scream, they bargain. Because the thought of forever feels like a knife pressed against the throat. It's not just distance. It's not just silence. It's a hole ripped out of the fabric of your life. And yet, in that hole, something stirs. Because forever isn't just about endings. It's about the space it opens, the void it creates. You see, when someone leaves forever, they don't just walk away from you. They take with them the noise, the clutter, the weight you didn't even know you were carrying. And suddenly, there's room. Room for something new, something strange, something you weren't ready for but needed all along. That's where the miracle hides, not in the comfort of holding on, but in the terror of letting go. Most people miss it because they're too busy clutching at what's slipping through their fingers. They can't stand the silence, so they drown it out. They can't bear the emptiness, so they stuff it with cheap replacements. But if you sit with it, really sit with it, you begin to notice the cracks in the world around you, and through those cracks, light starts to pour. It's almost cruel, isn't it, that the greatest gifts don't arrive when you're smiling and safe, but when you're broken, when your hands are trembling, when you can't see a reason to keep breathing. That's when the miracle steps in, uninvited, unavoidable, because it knows you're finally fragile enough to notice. Think about it. Miracles don't land on crowded tables. They don't knock on doors guarded by laughter and certainty. They slip into the shadows left behind by absence. They crawl through the void, hungry for a place to root themselves. And you become the ground they grow in. Without the loss, you'd never be soft enough to let them in. Without the goodbye, you'd never even notice the arrival. The tragedy is the price, and the miracle is the payment you never thought you'd get. Forever feels cruel because it leaves you standing there, staring at the space where someone used to be. You ache, you rage, you curse the sky. But look closer. That space is not empty. It's preparing you. It's stretching you, hollowing you, making you capable of holding more than you ever could before. Because if you were never emptied, how could you ever be filled? If you were never broken, how could you ever be remade? Forever is just the first step. The miracle is the second. They are linked like shadows and light, like breath and silence. One cannot exist without the other. And so, when someone leaves forever, don't only look at the absence. Don't only scream at the void. Watch it. Feel it. Let it consume you until you realize it's not a grave. It's a womb. Something is being birthed in the very place you thought life had ended. And the miracle, it's already on its way, already circling, already whispering at the edges of your despair. You can't see it yet, but you will, because the miracle always follows the forever. It always does. Miracles don't bloom in comfort. They don't arrive when life is polished, tidy, and neatly wrapped with a bow. They show up in ruins, in ashes, in the aftermath of something that tore your world apart. That's the strange, cruel beauty of it. You think loss is the end. That pain has stripped you bare and left you empty. But it's in those ruins, in the charred remains of what you thought would last forever, that miracles take root. They thrive where everything else has withered. They breathe where hope has suffocated. And the irony is, you never see them coming. Because you're too busy mourning what you lost to recognize what's being born in its place. It's like life has a twisted sense of humor. It waits until you're staring at the wreckage, until you've accepted there's nothing left worth salvaging. Then, suddenly, it drops something impossible into your hands. Not when you feel ready, not when you're standing tall, but when you're on your knees broken. Miracles don't care about your timing, your plans, or your sense of control. They arrive unannounced, when the ground has already collapsed beneath you, when the only thing you can do is surrender. That's their playground. Desperation, collapse, the sharp edge of despair. That's where they thrive. Think about every story you've ever heard about transformation, about change, about greatness. None of them begin with comfort. None of them start in a place of security. They begin in chaos, in pain, in something being ripped away. That's the soil that grows the impossible. But people hate that truth, don't they? They want miracles without the breaking, without the sacrifice, without the emptiness. They want the light without the shadow. But that's not how it works. The miracle feeds on the ruins. Without them, it starves. And so when loss comes, when someone leaves forever, when the world as you know it collapses, you can fight it, you can resist it, you can curse it. But the miracle doesn't care about your anger. It doesn't need your permission. It's already stirring in the background, already winding its way through the cracks. The ruins are not just ruins. They're a foundation for something else, something beyond what you imagined. And if you dare to stop looking only at the ashes, you might notice the spark already glowing beneath them. People waste their energy asking, why me? Why now? Why this? They claw at the past, desperate to glue it back together. But miracles don't live in the past. They live in the aftermath. The ruins are the invitation, the raw stage set for something new to perform. And isn't that what makes them miracles? They don't need your plans, your certainty, your approval. They need the exact opposite, your surrender, your collapse, your silence. They need the ruins, and they'll use them as fuel. So yes, miracles thrive in the ruins of loss. Not in spite of the destruction, but because of it. They are the proof that endings are not what they seem. That forever gone doesn't mean forever empty. It means something else is daring to grow in the cracks, waiting for you to notice. You just have to be broken enough, desperate enough, empty enough to let it in. Because without the ruins, there would be no miracle. And without the loss, you would never recognize its arrival. Forever gone does not mean forever empty. People confuse the two, like children terrified of the dark because they assume nothing lives in it. But the truth is, emptiness is never really empty. It's a trick, a mask, a stage waiting for its next act. When someone leaves, when something vanishes for good, you swear the space they filled has collapsed into a void. You tell yourself nothing will ever grow there again. But life is far too mischievous to leave you with a blank canvas. That space begins to breathe. It starts to whisper. It hungers for something to arrive, and sooner or later, it will be filled. The human mind hates the idea of absence. It wants permanence. It craves control. It aches for everything to stay just as it was. But permanence is an illusion, and control is a joke. Forever gone simply means the shape has changed, the form has shifted, the chapter has closed. It doesn't mean the story has ended. Look closely, behind the grief, behind the silence. You'll see something else stirring. Something that couldn't have existed while the old was still clinging to you. You see, as long as your hands are full of what you've lost, you can't take hold of what's next. The universe knows this. That's why it rips people from you, strips away comforts, forces you into the unbearable, because without the tearing, there would be no room for the miracle to crawl in. Think about it. A tree sheds its leaves every year, and it looks like death. The branches stand bare, the air grows colder, and everything seems lost. But it's not empty, is it? The roots are alive, the seeds are buried, and beneath that hollow silence, something is preparing to erupt again. Forever gone is just another way of saying the cycle has turned, that what once was has done its part, and what's to come is gathering strength in the shadows. People forget that. They see the loss, they feel the sting, and they call it the end. But endings are deceptive. They are simply doorways disguised as walls. The real cruelty isn't in the loss itself. It's in how blind we are to the possibility that follows. We wrap ourselves in grief. We worship the absence. We kneel at the grave of what was, never realizing that something else has already taken its place. Forever gone doesn't leave you barren. It leaves you transformed. And transformation is messy. It feels hollow. It feels cold. It feels unbearable. But that's only because you haven't yet noticed what's being born in the shadows of that emptiness. Most people can't stand the silence long enough to discover it. They rush to fill the gap with noise, with distractions, with anything to avoid the ache. But the ones who endure it, the ones who stare into the hollow without flinching, they're the ones who finally see it. That forever gone does not mean forever empty. It means a new form, a new presence, a new miracle creeping in where the old once stood. And when it arrives, you realize the truth. The space was never empty at all. It was simply preparing for what's next. Absence is a strange thing. People treat it like a monster, like a thief that rips everything away and leaves them hollow. They cry over what's no longer there. They scream into the void. They beg for the past to return. But absence isn't just a thief. It's also a stage being cleared. Imagine a theater where the old actors walk off. The curtains fall, the lights dim. For a moment, the stage looks abandoned, dead. Yet behind the curtain, something else is being prepared. Something new waits to step forward. That's what absence really is. It's not a grave. It's a preparation for wonder. The world is full of people who mistake silence for emptiness, loss for finality, endings for death. They can't see that the silence is breathing, that the absence is pregnant with something they haven't yet met. Wonder doesn't arrive when you're drowning in noise, when your life is cluttered with too many attachments. It arrives when the slate is wiped clean, when the void aches so badly you think you'll never recover. That's when the extraordinary slips in, uninvited, unnoticed by most, but undeniable for those willing to stare long enough into the dark. Absence creates space, and space is not nothing. It's possibility. Think about it when someone leaves, when something vanishes. You don't just lose them. You gain a cavity inside yourself, an emptiness you can't stop feeling. And as painful as that cavity is, it's also the one place where something new can grow. Wonder can't settle into a heart that's already crammed with yesterday. It needs the ache, the hollow, the room to stretch out and take root. Absence is the gardener, ripping out the old, cutting back what no longer belongs, leaving behind raw soil, waiting for the seeds of something greater. But people resist it, don't they? They rush to fill the absence with replacements. They plug it with noise, with distractions, with shallow comforts, terrified of what it might mean to just sit in that emptiness. They never give wonder the chance to arrive, because they're too busy running from the silence. Yet the silence is the birthplace of every miracle. It's the one place where wonder is allowed to bloom, because it doesn't have to fight through clutter or beg for attention. In the absence, it has all the room it needs. Absence is misunderstood because it feels cruel. It feels like betrayal. But step back and look closely. It's not cruelty, it's preparation. It's clearing out what you thought you needed so you can finally receive what you were meant to find. And the wonder that fills that space is never something you could have predicted. That's why it's wonder. It shocks you. It unsettles you. It feels impossible, yet undeniable. The next time you feel absence pressing against your chest, don't mistake it for a void. Don't confuse it with death. Look at it for what it truly is: a stage, an opening, a waiting room for the impossible. Absence doesn't kill wonder, it creates it. And if you're willing to endure the to let the silence surround you, you'll discover that absence isn't a thief after all. It's the hand pulling back the curtain, letting something far greater walk onto the stage. Pain sharpens the eyes in ways comfort never can. When everything is smooth, when the days roll by without friction, you grow blind. You stop noticing the details. You stop questioning the surface. You live half asleep in the illusion that all is well. But when pain slams into you, When something tears through your carefully built walls, suddenly your vision changes. You see cracks where you once saw perfection. You notice shadows where you once ignored them. Pain slices away the fog and forces you to stare at the truth without a filter. It doesn't ask for permission. It rips your eyelids open. Most people curse pain because it hurts, and of course it does. But the hurt is the very thing that wakes you up. Pain isn't polite, it isn't gentle, but it is precise. It cuts where you've been blind. It carves where you've been numb. You think it's punishing you, when in reality, it's stripping away the illusions you've been hiding behind. Comfort lets you stay asleep, but pain demands that you really look, at what you've been avoiding. And once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. That's the gift buried in the sting. Think about the times you've grown the most, changed the most, seen the world in a way you never had before. It wasn't when you were laughing. It wasn't when you felt safe. It was when everything fell apart. That's when the world showed itself to you raw, unpolished, unforgiving. That's when the lies cracked open and you finally glimpsed reality for what it was. Pain sharpens the eyes not just to suffering, but to beauty too. The kind of beauty you can't see when you're distracted by comfort. The kind of beauty that only reveals itself when you're stripped bare, when all you have left is the rawness of existence. People fear pain because they think it will destroy them. But more often, it destroys the mask, not the person beneath it. It burns away the shallow distractions, the fake smiles, the stories you tell yourself to keep going. It leaves you raw, vulnerable, exposed. And that's exactly where clarity lies. You see things as they are, not as you wish them to be. Pain doesn't hand you illusions, it hands you reality. And though reality can be cruel, it can also be liberating. With sharpened eyes, you begin to notice miracles in places you never thought to look. In the quiet, in the ordinary, in the spaces left behind after loss. Pain trains you to search, to notice, to recognize what others overlook. You start to see how absence creates wonder, how loss clears the ground for growth, how endings whisper of beginnings. None of this makes the pain easy, but it makes it purposeful. It turns the ache into vision. Pain doesn't just sharpen your eyes, it changes what you're able to see. It takes you beyond the surface and drags you into the depths. And while most run from it, those who endure it discover truths hidden from the comfortable. They learn that the sting isn't just suffering, it's sight. It's the world tearing off your blindfold, forcing you to notice the miracles buried beneath the ashes. That's why pain, as much as it burns, is the one teacher you can never ignore. It demands your attention, and in doing so, it gives you vision no comfort ever could. 24th of September, 2025, the day the cracks finally spread wide enough for everyone to see. I told you it was coming. I whispered, I shouted, I painted it in front of your faces. But you laughed, didn't you? You thought the walls were unbreakable, the system too strong, the order too perfect to fail. But collapse never announces itself with fireworks. It creeps, it rots, it eats from the inside, until one day the whole thing caves in. And now here we are, standing in the ruins, and all those warnings you brushed aside echo louder than ever. Collapse begins quietly before anyone notices. It doesn't kick down the door with sirens and flashing lights. No, it slips in, silent, patient, like a shadow that grows longer with every passing day. People expect destruction to arrive with noise, but real collapse is quieter than that. It hides in plain sight. A crack in the foundation here, a loose thread there. And while everyone is busy laughing, celebrating, pretending everything is fine, the rot spreads. By the time they look down, the ground beneath their feet has already been eaten hollow. That's the nature of it. It doesn't happen all at once. It begins with little signs, signs nobody wants to see. A rule bent here, a truth ignored there, a silence that should have been a scream but wasn't. And people, oh, they love to ignore what makes them uncomfortable. They convince themselves it's nothing, just bad luck, just a phase, just the cost of living. They drink their distractions, swallow their comforts, and look the other way while the decay grows teeth. That's how collapse wins, by using their blindness as fuel. It's never the big explosions that destroy empires. It's the termites, small, invisible, working day and night, chewing through the beams while the house still looks perfect from the outside. And people walk through it, smiling, clapping, decorating the walls, never realizing the floor is seconds away from giving out. By the time it happens, they gasp, they cry, they scream. How could this happen so suddenly? But it wasn't sudden. It was always happening. They just never wanted to see it. Quiet collapse is cruel because it pretends to be normal. It lets you carry on your daily rituals. It lets you chase your little dreams. It lets you pretend everything is under control. And then, in one sharp moment, it reveals the truth. You were never standing on solid ground. Every laugh, every plan, every comfort was built on hollow lies. Collapse doesn't shout, it waits. And when it strikes, it's already too late to run. But people, they don't like warnings. They hate them. Tell them the walls are cracking. They'll laugh. Tell them the fire is spreading. They'll say it's just a little smoke. Tell them collapse is coming, and they'll call you insane. Because it's easier to believe in stability, in safety, in the illusion that tomorrow will look just like today. Collapse counts on that. It thrives on denial. It grows stronger every time someone shrugs and says, everything will be fine. And that's the beauty of it, isn't it? Collapse doesn't have to fight its way in. It's welcomed. It's invited. People themselves build it by ignoring what's right in front of them. They stack lie upon lie, illusion upon illusion, until the weight is unbearable. And when the structure finally caves, they act surprised, as if they weren't the ones feeding it all along. The silence before the fall is the loudest sound no one hears. It's in the fake smiles, the forced laughter, the empty promises. It's in the way everyone knows something is wrong, but no one dares to say it out loud. That's how collapse hides. That's how it grows. And when it finally shows its face, when the quiet turns into rubble, people pretend it was sudden, unexpected, unpredictable. But deep down they knew, they always knew. Collapse begins quietly, not because it has to, but because people allow it to. They'd rather sleep than wake up to the truth. They'd rather close their eyes than face the cracks spreading beneath them. And so, it spreads, patient, unstoppable, until one day the silence breaks, and everyone realizes they were living in a house already burning to the ground. Warnings are always ignored until it's too late. People don't want to hear them, not really. They nod, they smirk, they pretend to listen, but deep down they don't believe. A warning doesn't fit their fantasy. It scratches at the little bubble they've built around themselves, the one filled with comfort, routine, safety. So when someone stands in front of them and says, "It's coming," they laugh. They roll their eyes. They call it paranoia, exaggeration, madness. Not because the warning isn't true, but because the truth is too heavy for their fragile little worlds. You see, people only accept what feels good. They want sweet lies, not bitter truths. They want promises that everything will stay the same, that nothing will ever change, that the order they cling to will never break. A warning threatens all of that. It forces them to look at cracks in the wall, to smell the smoke behind the curtain, to admit that maybe they aren't as safe as they pretend. And that's something they can't handle. So they laugh at the warning. They mock the messenger. They bury the thought deep down. Easier to deny than to prepare. But warnings don't stop being true just because people refuse to hear them. The fire still burns whether they acknowledge the smoke or not. The cracks still spread whether they choose to look or keep their eyes closed. A warning is a mirror, and people hate mirrors. They don't want to see their weakness, their ignorance, their helplessness. They want to stay blind until blindness betrays them. And then comes the collapse. Suddenly the same voices who mocked, who ignored, who dismissed, now they cry out. They scream, "Why didn't anyone tell us?" They beg for answers, for explanations, for rescue. But the warnings were always there. They were painted on the walls, whispered in their ears, shouted from the rooftops. They weren't hidden. They were rejected. Because people only hear what they want to, and warnings don't fit their songs of comfort. The tragic comedy of it all is that the ones who warn are always ridiculed. They're called pessimists, doomsayers, maniacs. Society loves to silence them because their words taste bitter. But those same people, when the collapse finally arrives, are the first to be remembered as prophets. Too late, of course. Too late for anyone to act. Warnings only make sense when time is still left, and people waste that time laughing. Warnings are not for the weak. They're not for the masses. They're for the few who can stand the sting of truth, who are willing to prepare while everyone else dances. But that's why so few ever listen. The majority prefers the illusion. They wrap themselves in comfort and call it reality, never realizing the fire is already at their door. By the time they hear the warning clearly, it's no longer a warning. It's a funeral bell. That's how it always goes. The world has a pattern. Someone shouts, "Wake up." Everyone laughs. Someone cries, "The cracks are here." Everyone shrugs, someone screams, "The collapse is coming." Everyone mocks. And then one day the floor gives out, and the same people who ridiculed now whisper regret. They whisper about how they should have listened, should have acted, should have taken it seriously. But warnings don't rewind time. They don't bend to regret. They stand tall, cold, unchanging, as proof that people had a chance and chose blindness. The cruel joke is that people don't actually hate the warning. They hate themselves for knowing it's true. That's why they attack it, why they bury it. Because every warning is a mirror, and deep down, they recognize their own reflection. They know the comfort they cling to is fragile. They know the stability they worship is an illusion. But instead of facing it, they laugh, they mock, they silence. Until the silence grows louder than any voice, and the warning becomes reality. Systems don't collapse because of the enemies outside. No, they fall because of the disease within. The rot starts in silence, hidden in shadows, where no one dares to look. People think danger comes with banners, with armies, with noise. But the real danger is quieter. It's in the corruption, whispered behind locked doors, in the greed no one wants to expose, in the small cracks everyone ignores. It's the little betrayals that no one talks about, the compromises that chip away at the foundation. The walls don't fall because someone pushed them too hard from the outside. They fall because termites have been eating them alive from the inside. But people don't see that. They look at the surface and think everything's fine. They see the lights still shining, the machines still running, the leaders still smiling, and they convince themselves the structure is strong. They don't notice the hollow sound when you knock on the walls, or the way the ground trembles under their feet. They choose not to notice, because noticing would mean admitting they've been living inside a corpse dressed up to look alive. The system feeds on denial. It thrives when people don't question, when they look away, when they pretend that everything is in order. And the irony is, the stronger it looks on the outside, the weaker it really is inside. Every great empire, every perfect system, every untouchable order, gone, not because someone attacked it, but because it consumed itself. The outside world only has to give it a little push, and it topples like a house of cards. Rot doesn't happen overnight. It builds, slowly, quietly, day after day, piece by piece. The foundation erodes while the people inside keep dancing. They celebrate, they boast, they talk about how unshakable it all is. And yet, beneath their feet, the floorboards are softening. The very thing they depend on is disintegrating while they sing songs of permanence. By the time they realize the truth, it's already too late. The structure doesn't warn you with a shout. It warns you with silence, with unease, with whispers most people refuse to hear. And when the collapse begins, they act surprised, shocked, as if no one could have seen it coming. They cry out, "Who destroyed us? Who attacked us? Who broke our world?" But the answer is always the same. No one had to destroy it. No one had to attack. They did it themselves. They built their kingdom on greed, on lies, on shortcuts, on selfishness. They let the termites in, and gave them permission to feast. And then, when the beams finally snapped, they looked for someone else to blame. That's the cruel beauty of rot. It hides in plain sight. It grows where no one wants to look, and the system knows how to mask it. Smiles on television, promises in speeches, celebrations of progress, all while the guts of the machine are corroding. People want the illusion more than the truth, so they never ask what's underneath. They don't want to know, because knowing means realizing they've been worshiping something already dead. Every system carries the seed of its own destruction. That's the law. The bigger it grows, the deeper the rot. The more it promises, the heavier the lies. And still, the people clap. They cheer. They defend the very thing that's eating them alive, because they'd rather feel safe inside a collapsing house than admit the house is collapsing. That's the trick. That's the joke. That's how it always ends. The inside kills the outside. The heart rots before the skin cracks. By the time anyone sees the collapse, the decay has been there for years, maybe decades. But people don't notice decay until it touches them personally. Until their roof caves in, until their walls crumble, until their world falls. And then, suddenly they care. Suddenly they cry out. Suddenly they wonder how it happened. But the truth is, it didn't just happen. It was happening all along. They just refuse to see it. People cling to illusions of stability because reality terrifies them. They need to believe that tomorrow will look like today, that the roof above their head will never leak, that the world they know will stay exactly the same. It's a little lullaby they sing to themselves, a story they repeat over and over until it feels like truth. But illusions are fragile things made of glass, and the moment life throws a stone, everything shatters. Still, people would rather clutch broken pieces in their bleeding hands than admit they were holding lies all along. Stability is the greatest trick ever sold. It's the promise that nothing will change, that the ground beneath you will never move. But everything changes, everything shifts, everything collapses eventually. Deep down, people know this, but they push it away. They drown it in distractions, in entertainment, in routine. As long as the lights stay on, as long as the shops stay open, as long as their lives feel predictable, they tell themselves it's all secure. They live in a house built on sand and pretend it's stone. The illusion doesn't just comfort them, it blinds them. They stop asking questions, stop noticing the cracks, stop preparing for storms. Because to prepare is to admit weakness, and to admit weakness is to face the truth. People don't want the truth, they want the performance. They want their leaders to stand on stages and smile, to promise them order, safety, and control. They don't care if it's a lie, not really, because the lie feels warm. It lets them sleep at night. It lets them pretend the monsters aren't already at the door. And when the illusion finally tears apart, they always act surprised. They stare at the rubble, wide-eyed, as if the world betrayed them. They say things like, "This wasn't supposed to happen," or "No one could have seen this coming." But it was always coming. The signs were always there. They just didn't want to look. They traded awareness for comfort. And comfort is a debt that always comes due. The real cruelty is that illusions don't just keep people calm, they keep them weak. If you think the world will never change, you never learn to adapt. If you think the system is unshakable, you never prepare for when it cracks. And when the collapse arrives, the illusion doesn't protect you. It strangles you. The very lie you clung to becomes the chain around your neck, dragging you down while the few who saw through it are already running free. But people don't learn. Even after collapse, even after ruin, they build new illusions. They tell themselves, this time it's different. This time it will last. This time it's real stability. And the cycle repeats. Because people don't want freedom. Not really. They want certainty. They don't want truth. They want comfort. They'll embrace a beautiful lie 1,000 times over before they accept a brutal truth once. And that's why collapse isn't just inevitable. It's deserved. Because the crowd doesn't live in reality. They live in dreams stitched together by fear. And dreams always end when the alarm finally rings. Illusions of stability are like paper walls painted to look like steel. From a distance, they seem strong, unbreakable. But the moment pressure hits, the paper rips, and everyone inside realizes they were never safe. That's when the panic begins. That's when the screaming starts. Not because the collapse was unexpected, but because the illusion was too convincing. They forgot it was paper. They believed it was steel. And when belief meets reality, reality always wins. Truth always sounds like madness before it becomes reality. That's the curse of seeing the cracks before everyone else. You point, you scream, you warn, and what do? They laugh. They call you crazy, paranoid, delusional. Because to them, nothing looks broken yet. The streets are still lit. The buildings are still standing. The routines are still playing out day after day. How could you be right when everything looks so normal? That's the trick of truth. It doesn't arrive with trumpets and parades. It creeps in quietly, showing itself only to the ones willing to look past the surface. But people don't like surface shattering. They don't like their little worlds disturbed. So they brand the truth as insanity. It's easier that way. If the messenger is insane, then the message doesn't matter. They can laugh it away, dismiss it, bury it under jokes and ridicule. That way they don't have to face the weight of the words. That way they can keep sleeping while the cracks deepen. To them, madness is safer than truth. And then time passes. The cracks widen. The ground begins to shake. Slowly, the world they trusted starts to twist. And suddenly, the words that sounded insane don't seem so insane anymore. They start whispering to each other, repeating the very warnings they mocked. They look at you with different eyes, not laughing now, but searching, almost desperate, because madness has turned into memory, and the truth has finally caught up with them. But by then, the luxury of time is gone. That's how it always works. First they laugh, then they ignore, then they fight, and finally they beg. The same people who spat in your face for speaking are the ones who will crawl to you when the walls start to fall. Not because they suddenly respect you, but because they realize you weren't mad. You were awake. And being awake in a world of dreamers is the greatest crime there is. People don't forgive you for breaking their illusion, not even when it saves them. The label of madness is a mask. It's how the world hides from what it doesn't want to face. Every truth teller, every visionary, every prophet was called mad before being called right. Society has a way of silencing what it fears by laughing at it, and people cling to that laughter. Because as long as they're laughing, they don't have to act. They don't have to prepare. They don't have to admit their world is weaker than they want it to be. But the truth doesn't care about being believed. It doesn't need approval. It doesn't need applause. It just sits patiently, waiting for the right moment to arrive. And when it does, the same crowd that mocked will crumble, their laughter replaced with screams. That's when they realize madness was never madness. It was foresight. It was clarity. It was the vision they lacked, but were too proud to accept. The tragedy is that truth doesn't become reality when people accept it. It becomes reality when it's too late to stop. The warnings are never valued in time. They only matter when the damage is done. And that's the cruel joke, isn't it? You can scream until your throat bleeds, but until the fire reaches their door, they'll call you insane for smelling smoke. Truth and madness are twins. They look the same in the beginning, but one grows stronger while the other fades. What separates them isn't logic or proof. It's time. Time is what turns the whisper of a lunatic into the prophecy of a genius. Time is what transforms laughter into regret, and in the end, the only difference between being mocked as mad and being remembered as right is how long it takes for reality to catch up.